What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Today we're going to be discussing snapshot street photography and why I photograph this way and how I photograph this way. So we'll be looking at some photographs that I've been making with the Ricoh GR3 and the Ricoh GR3X with high contrast black and white small JPEG files. And I find that by simplifying the process and by using a compact digital camera that I can slip into my front right pocket, I'm fueling my lust for life. And you can see here in the snapshot on the first slide, I'm photographing myself through the reflection in the mirror, and I'm riding my bus to work, and I'm not even looking through the LCD screen. And I'm essentially letting go with this new process by embracing imperfection and the spontaneous nature of both life and the way in which I'm photographing and snapshotting. And so essentially snapshot photography is providing me with more curiosity, and I'm photographing more than I ever have in the past. And I'm so eager to share with you some of the ideas that I have. And so in the past, I would put on my photography hat. I would put the camera on my neck and go out there in the hopes of making my next best photo. However, now with the Ricoh that I slip into my front right pocket, I'm essentially allowing myself to live my everyday life, and I bring the camera for the ride, where I'm no longer attached to this identity of being a photographer. And when I'm on the street, I simply go slow and I let life flow towards me. And then I'm there and I'm prepared with my camera and always ready to press the shutter. But I'm not making photography this chore or this burden or this thing that I must do. But photography for me is something that I have to do. And so by using a compact digital camera and simplifying my workflow, I'm essentially allowing myself to forever remain in this flow state of production through snapshotting my way through life. And so we'll be looking at some of the settings I use and discussing very briefly here exactly how I approach this thing. And so you see here in the photograph, I'm using a Ricoh GR3X, and there is a neck strap on the camera. However, I do not use this neck strap. This was something I was testing with a very long time ago. I always use the Ricoh on a wrist strap. And so the reason I recommend the Ricoh GR3 and the Ricoh GR3X is because I find they're the simplest, smallest compact digital camera for the job. And by removing the viewfinder and embracing the LCD screen, you will embrace the snapshot more fluidly, where limiting yourself and giving yourself a creative constraint by removing the viewfinder and simplifying the process, I find that this will actually increase your creativity and your ability to find your voice and to find your own unique style with photography. And so these are the settings that I use within my camera. I simply set the camera in AV mode or program mode. I typically use the aperture priority mode, but there are a lot of moments where I switch to program mode. I oftentimes use just the snap focus. I have on my camera the FN button set so that I can go in between single point focus and snap focus. All I have to do is like click a little button and I go in between snap focus and single point focus, highlight weighted metering. And if you want to see more of these settings and the very nitty-gritty details and some screenshots and behind-the-scenes videos, just go to dantesisifo.com, click the Start Here page, scroll down maybe a little bit, and find my street photography workflow. You can also just Google like Dante Sisifo street photography workflow 2025 or something like this, and it'll pop up. And my image settings are very simple. I'm using a small JPEG file with the highest contrast cranked to the max. I use the high contrast black and white. I have these exact settings cranked in here with the shading, the clarity, the grain, the sharpness. All of these things are baked into the camera. And so I simplify my workflow and I allow myself to go out there and to photograph more. And the results of the photographs, because I'm not using the LCD screen or sometimes looking through the LCD screen, I'm letting go and allowing the imperfect nature and the spontaneous nature of life and the way that I'm photographing take over. And I'm making more loose compositions that don't necessarily follow the rules of photography. And so by photographing this way, I'm forever remaining in the spirit of play, like a big kid with the camera, where I treat the world as my playground and my canvas, and I embrace the amateur mindset when I'm out there. And for me, the snapshot, it becomes the most democratic way of photographing, where essentially anybody can crank in these settings, pick up a Ricoh, and go and photograph and play and experiment more. And so when I photograph every single morning, I essentially wake up and I return to day one every day. And this is where I want to be. By returning to day one, I find that the road and the journey and the process brings more meaning, where essentially I have this endless pursuit of increasing my curiosity through photography. And when I'm out there and I'm exploring, I'm looking up at the clouds and the way the light interacts with them, and finding myself with wonder and awe, like a kid with a camera, like an amateur photographer, endlessly, where I essentially enjoy this process of relearning and growing and tinkering and experimenting and evolving, because through change, I find more joy. And so photography simply fuels my lust for life. And I essentially love photography because it allows me to experience life in the moment, and allows me to have this excuse to be a flinner in my hometown, and to go for long walks, and to explore, and to slow down, and to observe all the details in the fleeting moments, where I'm no longer looking and searching and hoping for a certain destination or an outcome with the photographs I make. However, by removing myself and detaching myself from the results, I'm actually photographing more with more intensity, and I'm much more curious these days. And I find that by photographing loosely with the snapshot approach, I'm finding the results in my photographs to evoke the soul of the street and the soul of me. And so by simplifying the process and photographing this way, I no longer have to deal with processing. I no longer have to deal with external hard drives and backup times. I skip RAW and the use of Lightroom and simply use the Photos app that's built into my iPad. And so you can see here, when I look at the behind the scenes of this photograph, the file is only 4 megabytes, which means I can store so many photos. And the small JPEG file looks great. And I find that the iPad Pro is the perfect tool for the job. You can see here with the Photos app that's built in to the iPad, I can go through by simply scrolling on this context sheet. I can move photos around and rearrange things. I can make folders and selections very quickly without needing to process anything. And so the use of the iPad is very seamless with this snapshot approach, where every single day, all I do is use my USB-C to SD reader, plug it in, and I'm good to go. And I can import my photos with speed. And I love this workflow and this very technical side of this process, because my goal is to continuously photograph for the rest of my life. And so by simplifying my process now, very early in my journey, I'm essentially allowing myself to go forward with longevity, I believe. And so those are some ideas I have about the workflow and why I love it. And so, yeah, when I'm on the streets and I'm walking, and when I'm walking on the streets, I'm walking 75% slower than everybody else around me. And so by going slow, I can recognize the rhythm of the street and the way that people move on the street with their feet. And, I become much more in tune with my surroundings and recognize these different patterns that exist in nature and human behavior, and see the light and the way that it reflects off the buildings and the windows, and notice the way that people gesture. And, by slowing down and snapshotting very loosely and sort of just embracing the flow and the rhythm of the street, the photographs I make wind up reflecting that energy. And so this is why I love snapshot photography. It's so liberating. I only need to put a camera in my pocket. I'm good to go. I no longer have to put on the lens, to make these decisions. I essentially have no decision fatigue. By having no interchangeable lens on my camera, by not having a viewfinder, by limiting myself to black and white and a JPEG file, it's allowing me to remain disciplined and to photograph every single day without any excuses. And so it just becomes so much more fun and joyous. And yeah, I find that it's fueling my life with more meaning. And I find that I'm living my everyday life, and I'm bringing the camera for the ride. Where I was visiting Lancaster just last week to purchase meat from the Amish, and photographed out the side of the window. And I find myself making more interesting photographs because of this, because I'm embracing change and movement. And I have essentially entered this stream of becoming, where essentially by detaching myself from making a great photograph or hoping to make my next best photograph, I actually have in the back of my head this idea that my next photograph is my best photograph. And so this motivates me to move forward each day, to snapshot more. And so also, in terms of movement, when I'm photographing, because I have the camera attached to my wrist strap on my wrist, the use of a Ricoh, it's the closest thing to not having a camera. And it allows me to enter this flow state of responding and moving and adjusting my body in very nuanced ways where I can hold the camera up high, down low. And I find that the way I move and photograph around things and move through a scene and photograph, it evokes this essence and this feeling of movement in the photograph. And yeah, I find that I'm not often simply, making a snapshot and moving on, but I'm allowing the movement within the frame to come my way, and I'm moving my physical body through a scene and snapshotting things this way, and allowing the play and the sort of spontaneous nature of life take over through this approach of snapshotting, through movement, through change, and through rearranging my body and trying different angles. And again, the approach to this kind of photography through snapshotting, it's extremely democratic, and this makes me so happy because I can encourage you or somebody out there to give it a try because it's so easy and accessible. And this is something I find to be empowering, where the goal going forward is to evoke the essence, the emotion, the soul of the street and of yourself as a photographer. And it becomes so easy where I'm snapshotting out the window during a car ride, and the imperfection, the blur, the grain, the grit of the night sky becomes something beautiful in a snapshot, and the mundane becomes extraordinary, where the challenge of street photography and the question to ask yourself is, can you walk the same mundane lane but still find something to uplift in a photograph? For me, what the snapshot is providing is this ability for me to look at the ordinary and lift it to an extraordinary height, where the details, the way the puddles form, the textures on the walls, and the things that are overlooked become something that I can uplift in these photographs, where in the past I would limit myself to photographing in a particular way, looking for people and decisive moments in these interesting scenes, whether I was traveling to exotic locations and photographing in certain situations. But now everything is photographable, and the most random thing can become something extraordinary through the use of my camera and snapshotting these different elements and these different things that make up street life, where I'm no longer looking and searching on the hunt for that next best photograph, but I'm allowing myself to slow down and to recognize the details and find God in the details in these very beautiful, overlooked, mundane things. And I find that by experimenting with my perspective and slowing down and photographing these different details, I'm allowing myself to play more, to experiment more. By using the macro function, I'm getting closer and closer to life. I'm getting closer and closer to the textures on the walls, to the moments, to the gestures. And this is something I find to be very groundbreaking for me personally. It's something I'm experimenting with every single day when I go out there, because in the past, once again, I would limit myself, or I wouldn't say limit myself, but yeah, I would say limit myself. I would only ever photograph people, but now I find the infrastructure, the sort of fire hydrants, the lampposts, the doors, the knockers, the buildings, these details that make up city life interest me. And by snapshotting, I find that there is so much meaning and beauty in the mundane, where I no longer have these rigid rules or guidelines that I subscribe to, and I'm essentially photographing through the eyes of a child. What would a child see if they were to go out there with the camera for the first time? Essentially, that's what I'm trying to do every single day, is by looking and observing with curiosity and wonder at the forefront, where embracing the high contrast black and white aesthetically within my camera settings is allowing me to abstract life, where I can create something from nothing. I find the aesthetics and the use of this high contrast file is allowing me to push the boundaries within the medium and to take something from real life and to extol it to a new height. And the photograph becomes not only a reflection of the world around me, but of my inner world, of my soul, about how I feel and see and perceive the world. And so each photograph becomes a reflection of my world. And I find that one of the most powerful thoughts I have about photography is that you can create a new world in a fraction of a second, where think of a little kid, playing and creating little worlds with Legos. Or I used to have these little toy figurines of crusaders and warriors that I picked up in Rome, and I would put them around my room and, experiment and play. And yeah, essentially that's where I want to be endlessly. And I think the Snapshot provides this for me, right? And so very simple. All you need to do to practice this approach to photography is set your body in motion without any preconceived notions of what you will find, and you will be surprised through the spirit of play and photographing this way. I love the way that the photographs reflect the spontaneous nature of life itself, and the way that I'm photographing and shooting loosely reflects that in the frames I make, where I'm trying to experiment and push and break the rules. And so it's a very freeing approach. Just take the camera with you, snapshot your way through life, throw the camera around, experiment, let yourself be surprised. This to me is what it's all about. What will reality manifest to be in the photographs you make? Who knows? The camera will take over and you'll be there and prepared to press the shutter, but the result of the photograph, oftentimes you'll be surprised, where what I see in the photograph and what I saw in the moment that I pressed the shutter isn't necessarily what I get in the photograph in the result, if that makes sense. Where, what I see isn't what I get. What I get in the photograph is what I didn't see. It's what the camera saw. It's something that I find to be very liberating. By surprising myself through this approach, I'm finding imperfection as beautiful and allowing the compositions to form organically, embracing the raw, the unexpected, rather than perfection. Sometimes when I'm using the aperture priority mode and I'm shooting in a low light situation by accident, because I'm not thinking, oh, I got to switch to P mode, I'm letting go and the shutter speed will, go out of whack, and maybe I'm shooting with the improper settings. But there's something beautiful about these imperfections, and there's something beautiful about letting go, and photographing this way maybe almost becomes painterly. And I find actually when you look at the word photography, phos meaning light, graphia meaning drawing or writing, we're writing with light, we're drawing with light, and we're creating instant sketches of light and life. And so let go, embrace the power of simplicity. All you really need is a camera, put it in your pocket and point and shoot, right? I think that when you have a very simple workflow and you embrace the snapshot, you're no longer thinking and analyzing with your brain, but you're shooting through your heart, through your gut, through your intuition. And so ultimately the goal is to think less and to shoot more. And when I'm photographing and snapshotting this way, I enter this meditative state of slowing down and being present and simply responding through my heart, through my soul. And I hope the photographs become a reflection of that. So the joy of surprise is something so beautiful, where every single day I go out and photograph, and I'm always shooting. And I'm shooting in the same location over and over again, right? And so you would think, oh, I'm going to get burnt out. I'm just walking the same street. Like I walk Market Street like every goddamn day. And, I'm like, well, most days, like nothing interesting, quote unquote, interesting really happens. People are coming from work, going here and there. But there's something about the use of high contrast black and white and the ability to create this new world in the photograph I make by abstracting reality that allows me to embrace the mundane and the monotony and the boredom and give myself this creative ability to uplift life to a new height by discovering the unfamiliarity in the familiar, by giving myself the joy of the surprise in the photograph, in the result. And that is so liberating, where half of the time I'm photographing something, I'm simply asking why. I'm just like, snap, question mark, snap, question mark. I'm just curious. I'm getting closer to life. I'm just chipping away at things and allowing the surprise of the result in the photograph fuel me with this abundance of curiosity to go out there each and every day and to continuously snapshot my way through life. And so the goal is to simply photograph life as it is, to simply shoot more and to think less, to embrace the spontaneous nature of photographing and allow your curiosity to guide you, and go out there and explore the open world, as there's so much to do, to see, and to photograph. And, a lot of the times I'll just take the camera for the ride. This was one of the first snapshots that I made with this process. Actually, I think this is like the first photo on my Photos app from like over 2 years ago. I went for a bike ride, and yeah, I just made a snapshot while I was riding my bike through movement. And yeah, I think that's the beauty of the snapshot is you can go out there and live your everyday life and yeah, take the camera for the ride and simply photograph what means most to you and what brings you joy. And for me, I love biking. I love walking along the river. I love exploring the outskirts of the city and walking certain routes. And yeah, I find that by simply letting go and embracing the snapshot, yeah, I'm becoming a more joyful photographer. And I'm so eager to share that because maybe you too can find this feeling of joy through photography like me. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to find some more of these photos, or you're just like curious about my my work and the new photos that I've been making. Oh, here's the workflow. You can access it here. 2025 Ricoh workflow. You'll see the settings and behind the scenes videos, snapshots, screenshots, and all that kind of stuff. But if you scroll all the way to the bottom, I believe I have a Google Photos drive. It says new photos. And so I have all of them backed up in this public Google Photos right now because honestly, I just have so many photos to go through. To even make selections would bring me a headache, but I have them available here. So if you want to scroll through and, get some ideas from me, steal some ideas, feel free, come join me on this journey. I encourage you to give it a go. And so here you can access all of my work in this little stream on Google Photos. If you can access, hopefully you can access it. This is a photo I made just the other day when I was, check, this is my new thing. I get meat in bulk. So I have here in my fridge all freaking meat, man, from the Amish. And so, I have every couple of months I'm going to the Amish. And when I was in the butcher shop, I made this photo. And the great thing about the Ricoh is, yes, he noticed me. Obviously, he's looking my way and wondering why I'm photographing. But when I'm photographing, and it's it's like as big as this kitchen, like a really small location, and like he's right there. But I was like essentially pretending to photograph the bones and the different things on the wall. And then with the Ricoh, I just panned down and snapped the shutter as I was going down to look at the photo, kind of just like feigning or like pretending to make the photo. And so, yeah, just like snapshotting in these situations and photographing this way with a small digital compact camera, you can get so much more close to people and photograph in this way that is less disturbing or aggressive. And yeah, you really can be like a little fly on the wall in very intimate situations. And so, yeah, those are just some random thoughts I have about snapshot street photography. Yeah, looking forward to sharing more ideas about this approach because going forward, it seems like this is the workflow for me. So I highly encourage you to give it a try too. I think it'll bring you more joy in your photography and allow you to learn and grow endlessly through the amateur mindset. Yeah, I find this is where we can essentially have infinite possibility. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.